I remember very well when the first day I met Jean-Pierre Melville. I was writing about films, and the first article was about Melville, and I wanted to do an interview. So I went to see him, and I did a small interview of him. And from then on, Melville asked me what I wanted to do. I said, I would like to direct. So he said, so come meet me, and I will try to help you. And he did with me what he did with some young people. We became, how do you say, his protégé. He was most of the time taking us, and it happened to Volker Schlendorf, it happened to many people, in long ride. And we were driving in Paris, and he was explaining us a place related to the story of the underworld. It's how Pierrot le Fou lived there or was caught there. It's in his house that somebody betrayed Abel Davos, or it was a place where people were meeting in the resistance. So we had, 3 hours, 4 hours drive with sometimes a bite to eat, going to see 1 or 2 movies. And after midnight, the ride was going on, and I was brought home in the room I was renting about at 3 in the morning. And next day, the same thing. So I had that life. I saw a lot of films with him, and I see echoes of those films in Le Doulos and in Le Deuxième Souffle. One of them especially, which is Crime Wave. And I know because Melville loved that film. During the scene, the Sailly is chewing up a toothpick. This comes from Crime Wave. Melville told that to me. I said, I will give him the same kind of toothpick than Sterling Hayden. And he borrowed things the same way that he borrowed shots from Odds Against Tomorrow. The wallpaper of Odds Against Tomorrow, you can find that in many Melville's films, including films which have nothing to do with cop and gangster. He was obsessed by the wallpaper of some of and he was asking his production designer to copy it. I will never forget the first day I came to his studio when he made me visit the TOUS stage, the bar, and he was living just upstairs. It was always like night inside because he had insomnia. And the stairs to the apartment, I think you can see them in practically all those films. Certainly in Le Doulos and Samurai. You can see somebody climbing, in fact, to Melville's apartment. He gave me my first job, like fourth AD. The second AD was Volker Schlendorf. And as the first AD was fired immediately, before the film started, because there was something that Melville had to be in war with 1, 2, or 3 people in the crew, and 1, 2, or 3 people in the cast. And when he was at war with them, it was deadly. And he could be, the same time, a few hours after, be the most charming and delicious man in the world. At the beginning of a film, Melville says, I'm saying good morning, hello to everybody, and I will not say it during the whole film, never, because that's a big loss of time. And he had calculated that by saying good morning to everybody in the crew, he was losing like 3 minutes every day. So he said that was something which, so this will count for the whole movie. He says, I will never say hello to you after that. And at the end, Melville said to me, you are hopeless as an AD, which I was. He said I was hopeless, but he did something great to me. He said, I think you can be good as a press agent. And I did. And I was hired by Georges de Bourgard, and it's how I became the press agent of Jean-Luc Godard, of Claude Chabrol, of Pierre Schoendorfer, of many directors during 3 years, 4 years. Being press agent for Melville, you were escaping that bullying, I mean, that kind of attitude, which was, I mean, it was getting great result, but I always thought that there must be other way to get what you want. And I became really the press agent because Belmondo fired the guy who had been hired to be press agent, whose name was Richard Balducci, and who published, or he did not publish himself, but he let publish a kind of scandalous column about Belmondo in a worst gossipy. So I was there when Belmondo in the studio, the Rue Génère, was chasing Balducci, caught Balducci, and forced him to eat the newspaper. And Balducci says, "Don't do that to me, I'm a coward, don't do that to me." And Belmondo was putting the newspaper in his mouth. And then Balducci, after that event, never came, and I took over the film. It's how I took over Le Doulos after that scene, which could be in Le Doulos. I mean, that Belmondo was behaving exactly like the character in the film. The first shot, we start from the Sacré-Cœur, that always I can see Melville explaining me in the editing room that it was a statement he was making against Pigalle and the underworld. So he was going away from Bob le Flambeur. That's the meaning of the first shot. That's I was taking my distance with the world of Bob le Flambeur by that zoom. The shooting went very, very fast. It was efficient. And I say, very, very few shots. He knew where to put the camera. He knew what he wanted. There was no improvisation. I mean, what is striking when you see the film is their economy. How each shot counts. There was no coverage. Very, very little coverage. You could not edit the film of Melville in 20 different ways. 80% of the film was already there in the editing room. And the lighting by Nicolas Ayer, who was one of those cameramen that Melville loved, but he was a very charming man, which Melville sued at the end of the film, because in the shot of the car falling from the cliff, there were two cameras, and Nicolas Ayer was on one and the operator was on the other. By economy, Melville did not want to hire another cameraman, another operator. And Nicolas Ayer, who was the cameraman and not the operator, forgot to push the button. So he had only one shot, and not two, of the stunt. Yeah. So he sued him. Melville loved to sue. He was an obsessed in suing. I mean, actors, part of the crew, co-producer. He was always suing his producer, co-producer, the exhibitors when they were not put. He was absolutely obsessive about that. I mean, talking of an obsession, when he was called by a producer, I mean, I've witnessed that. On Le Deuxième Souffle, I was in his office when he was called. Somebody proposing him Le Deuxième Souffle, and immediately opened a file and he put case Le Deuxième Souffle. Immediately he had, it was a legal case before they exchanged any word on the contract. In Le Doulos, the only disagreement, and I've seen Belmondo questioned Melville several times was the way the women were cast. Belmondo felt that Melville took amateurs, which were not good and not up to the quality of the film. He was critical of that, and I think he was right. I think he was right. Melville cast his secretary, the girls that who is tied up to is Melville's secretary. Melville does not know how to handle women, does not know how to direct them. I don't think he is interested. It's true of all his gangster films. The most important thing are the men, are the relationship between the men, the relationship between the men and the masculine environment. And the feeling that Melville deals with are masculine feelings. Loyalty, friendship, betrayal, and he's very good at that. I don't think Melville was a great screenwriter of original stories. One must not forget that the Doulos is a very faithful adaptation of a good book by Pierre Lesoux. He wanted to describe French gangster as behaving, in fact, as American gangster, but put in a French background. In his head, Melville's obsession was to be the equal of William Wyler. He was the director that he was admiring above all the other American directors. The films, as the directors, were or masterpiece or shit. There was nothing in between. There was not a film which has good things but is not totally successful or very interesting. This was words which he was never using. It was 4 stars or that. Like everything from William Wyler is great. And the people who were against Melville, I'm thinking of Jacques Rivette, for instance, always said that the problem with Melville in his gangsters film is he wanted to do tragedy, Greek tragedy, with by magnifying characters who were, in fact, in real life, despicable. It's something that the French screenwriter Michel Audiard kept telling me. He said the French gangsters, most of them had worked with the French Gestapo. They were anti-Semitic. They tortured Jews, resistant. They betrayed everybody. They were betray each other. You cannot make tragedy with them. You cannot. But Melville succeeded in creating a world of his own, which was normally he was thinking that he was making American film in France, but it's not. It's not a copy of an American film. It's not a copy of the reality. It's something completely special, completely personal. And you find that since the first shot of Le Doulos, it's very clear. It's really those 2 films who put him in the mainstream. Before that, he was taken seriously by a few film buffs, the Cahiers du Cinéma, people like that, but not by the system. And so they were very, very important. And at the end, I heard him very often say, in France there is only 2 directors, Clouseau and myself. And he says, and Clouseau lately, so so I was, when I started making films, in a way, I was glad that he had disappeared, because I would have feared his judgment.